By the time Alma Venn walked into the courthouse, carrying the proof that could save every farm in Laurel Valley, half the town had already laughed at her, called her desperate, and told her no high-country cowboy would ever choose a woman built like her. They did not know she had crossed a mountain in a freezing rain to find the letters they had hidden. They did not know the respected men sitting behind the hearing table had sold the valley one quiet signature at a time. And they did not know that Eben Saye, the lonely rancher whose land held the only reliable spring for 40 miles, had spent 3 foolish weeks searching for a wife, while the one woman who understood his heart, his ranch, and the danger beneath his feet had been serving him coffee every morning. When Alma stopped in the center of that crowded room, her broad shoulders rising with one steady breath, the laughter died. She laid a battered leather packet on the clerk's desk and looked at the men who had tried to shame her into silence. "You wanted me invisible," she said. "That was your mistake. Invisible women hear everything." 6 weeks earlier, the first cold wind of September came down from the Sawtooth Peaks and rattled every loose window in the Mountain Bell boarding house. Alma felt it before sunrise, while she stood at the iron stove, turning corn cakes with one hand and stirring apple preserves with the other. She was 42, broad and heavy through the middle, with thick arms made strong by flour sacks, wash tubs, firewood, and years of work no one else wanted. Her face was soft and round, her dark hair streaked with silver at the temples. By 7 each morning, a few strands always escaped her bun and curled against her damp cheeks. She did not move quickly, especially on the narrow stairs, but everything she did had a quiet order to it. 12 plates appeared warm, 12 cups stayed filled. No child left her dining room hungry if she could help it. The boarding house sat above the land office on the crooked main street of Bellweather, Colorado, a mountain town too small for secrets and too proud to admit it survived on favors. Alma managed both floors for Judge Orrin Bell's widow, who had moved to Denver after her husband's death and left the building in Alma's care. The upstairs rooms held miners between claims, widows waiting for money, cowboys snowed out of distant camps, and families who promised to pay when they could. The downstairs office held deed books, water filings, survey maps, and old letters in dusty cabinets. The county clerk came twice a week. On the other days, Alma accepted papers, recorded the hour, and placed them in the locked tray. She had never been given a title. Still, after 9 years, she knew the records better than anyone in town. That morning, a ranch wife named Cora Bellamy came through the back door with 2 small boys and no money. Her husband had broken his leg under a timber wagon. Alma said nothing about the unpaid room bill. She set 3 more places, thinned the batter, and slipped an extra spoonful of preserves onto each child's plate. One of the boys stared at her round arms as she reached across him, then looked embarrassed when his mother touched his shoulder. Alma only smiled. "Eat while it's hot, honey. Mountains make a person hungry." The front bell jingled just as the last corn cake left the griddle. Mrs. Mildred Harrow entered, wearing a plum-colored traveling dress that had never brushed honest mud. Her husband was the mayor, the owner of the largest dry goods store, and the kind of man who shook your hand while checking what was in your pocket. Mildred looked around the crowded dining room and wrinkled her nose. "Alma, you really must stop taking in every sad story that limps through town," she said. "This is a business, not a feeding trough, though I suppose a woman with your appetite feels sympathy for anything hungry." 2 young women behind her covered their smiles. Alma's hand tightened around the coffee pot. The comment was not new. In Bellweather, people spoke about her body as if she had left it lying across the road and inconvenienced their horses. They joked when she climbed the stairs. They watched what she put on her own plate. They praised her pies, then laughed that she must have eaten the first 3. Alma had learned to answer cruelty with stillness because anger, on a woman like her, was called ugliness twice over. "Mrs. Bellamy's family will be staying until her husband can travel," Alma said. "The back room is free." Mildred removed one glove finger by finger. Your softness will ruin this place. It has kept the lamps burning for 9 years. The room went quiet. Alma did not raise her voice. That made the answer land harder. Mildred's narrow smile held for a moment, then broke. She turned toward the office door, as though she had come for business all along. My husband needs the Saye file, she said. The old Sage Crown deed and every water paper attached to it. Alma set down the pot. County files do not leave the office. Mayor Harrow may read them here when Clerk Mercer is present. You have become very grand for a boarding house cook. No, ma'am, only careful. Mildred stared at her, and something colder than dislike passed through her eyes. Then she put her glove back on and left without taking breakfast. Alma watched through the window as she crossed the street toward Harrow Dry Goods. Mayor Calvin Harrow waited inside the doorway with Gideon Pike, president of the Bellweather Bank. The two men bent close as Mildred spoke. Pike looked toward the boarding house. When he saw Alma watching, he tipped his hat. Near noon, Eben Saye rode into town, under a sky the color of worn steel. Alma knew his horse before she clearly saw the rider. Blue was a tall blue roan, with a dark mane and one white sock, steady on bad ground and suspicious of umbrellas. Eben sat the saddle with the loose balance of a man who had spent more hours on horseback than at a table. He was 39, long-shouldered, quiet, and weathered by sun that had drawn fine lines around his grey eyes. His coat was patched at one elbow. His hat carried a pale ring from last winter's snow. He owned Sage Crown Ranch, though owned was a proud word for a place he had kept alive through debt, drought, and grief. The ranch lay where the mountain narrowed into Laurel Valley. Coldwater Spring rose under Eben's north pasture, filled his stock pond, then fed the creek that watered every farm below. In dry years, the spring was not merely useful, it was life. Eben's father had protected it. Eben's mother had kept careful notebooks of its flow. After they died, Eben stayed alone in the high house, tending cattle and speaking to no one unless work required it. He tied Blue at the rail and entered the land office with an envelope folded in his fist. Alma was copying a homestead description into the daybook. He put the envelope before her. This came by special post, he said. Pike says I ought to read it with a lawyer. Then why bring it to me? Because lawyers tell a man how frightened he should be after they decide what fear is worth. You tell me what the words mean. That was as close to praise as Eben usually came. Alma tried not to show how it warmed her. She wiped her fingers, opened the paper, and read it once. Then she read it again more slowly. The notice claimed that Sage Crown's original territorial grant contained a domestic residency condition. To keep control of Coldwater Spring, the current male holder had to establish a lawful family household on the property before the annual inspection on October 1st. If he failed, the separate water privilege would revert to the county for reassignment. The notice named a new irrigation company as first applicant, the Western Divide Land and Canal Company. Alma looked up. Have you ever seen this condition before? No. Did your father speak of it? My father spoke about weather, cattle, and the price of nails. If marriage held the creek in place, I expect he would have mentioned it. She ran her thumb just above the county seal without touching the ink. This seal is real, but the wording troubles me. A family household is not usually defined by a wedding. Your mother inherited half the ranch before she married your father, didn't she? That is what she told me. Then a condition written only for a male holder makes little sense. Eben pulled out the chair opposite her and sat. Mercer says old grants were full of nonsense, says my choices are to marry by the first or lose the spring while I fight in court. A court fight could take a year. The valley would be dry by June. Alma heard the clock ticking over the filing cabinet. Let me compare this with the deed book. She unlocked the cabinet and lifted out volume 4, a heavy calfskin book with a cracked brown spine. Eben moved to help, but she already had it against her hip. She carried it to the table and opened to the Saye grant. The original was copied in dark brown ink. Its lines described the ridge, the lower meadow, the spring, and the obligation to allow natural overflow into Laurel Creek. There was no marriage condition. Then the notice is a lie. Eben said. Not necessarily. They may claim the condition sits in an attachment. Old files wander. But this margin mark is new. Alma pointed to a small cross beside the water paragraph. Someone added it in blue-black ink. The rest has faded brown. Eben leaned close enough that she smelled cold air, horse leather, and pine smoke on his coat. Can you prove when? Not from this page. I need the survey packet and the correspondence file. She searched the S cabinet. The folder was there, but it felt too thin. Inside were tax receipts and grazing notes. The old survey packet was missing. So were 3 letters listed on the index card. Eben's expression tightened. Who can take records from this room? Clerk Silas Mercer. Deputy Clerk Webb. Mayor Harrow, if Mercer signs them out. Mrs. Bell owned a key, but she returned it when she moved. And you. The words were plain, not accusing, yet they hurt. Alma met his eyes. And me. He glanced away first. I didn't mean it that way. I know how you meant it. That does not make the file appear. Eben stood and walked to the window. Across the street, Gideon Pike came out of the bank and began speaking to Mayor Harrow. They both looked toward Blue at the rail. If the condition is real, Eben said, I have 24 days. To find a wife? To keep water in the valley. Alma closed the deed book. She knew what he meant. She also knew what he had not said. Marriage, to Eben, was being reduced to a fence post he had to set before snow. The idea should have seemed foolish. Instead, it stirred a small, shameful ache she had kept buried for years. Eben ate supper at the Mountain Bell that evening. He took his usual chair near the stove, where he could see both doors. Alma served beef and barley soup with warm bread. When she set down his bowl, he caught her wrist lightly. Do you believe it's forged? He asked. She looked at his hand, and he released her. I believe someone expects you to panic before you ask enough questions. I am asking. You are also thinking of doing exactly what the paper tells you. If I have to choose between looking foolish and watching families lose their farms, I can live with foolish. And the woman? Eben frowned. What woman? The one you marry. Can she live with being a legal tool? He looked into the steam rising from his bowl. I would tell her the truth. I would give her a fair home, her own money, and any freedom she wanted. Everything but love. His grey eyes lifted to hers. For one suspended moment, neither of them moved. Alma wished he would see what she could not bring herself to say. She wished it so fiercely that she felt foolish before he even answered. Love has not shown much interest in Sage Crown, he said. Alma drew her wrist against her apron. Maybe it grew tired of knocking. He seemed about to ask what she meant, but the front door opened and 3 cattlemen entered, bringing cold wind and loud voices. Alma went back to the kitchen. By the time she returned, Eben's bowl was empty and the moment had closed. News of Eben's problem traveled through Bellweather by breakfast. By noon, it had improved itself into a tale about a rich rancher seeking a bride. Sage Crown was not rich, but no rumor had ever been strengthened by accuracy. Women who had barely nodded to Eben began finding reasons to pass the boarding house. Lila Crane, the schoolteacher's pretty younger sister, arrived with a pie and asked whether Eben liked cherries. The widow Pearl Dacey wanted to know if the ranch house had a piano. Mildred Harrow's niece, Violet, came from Denver in a green velvet hat and said mountain air would improve her complexion. Alma answered each question calmly. Eben liked apple more than cherry. The ranch house had no piano. Mountain air improved honesty before complexion. That last answer did not please Violet. Aunt Mildred says you know everything about him, the young woman said, leaning on the office counter. How peculiar. He has boarded here during winter storms. People speak when snow closes the road. Violet's eyes moved over Alma's figure with open amusement. I suppose men speak freely around women they do not have to impress. Alma felt the insult settle into the room. Violet smiled, as though she had offered a harmless observation. Alma handed back her visiting card. Then Mr. Saye should find conversation with you very difficult. Violet's smile vanished. Behind her, young Deputy Clerk Webb coughed into his sleeve to hide a laugh. Alma regretted the answer almost at once, not because it was untrue, but because sharp words left a taste she did not enjoy. Still, she would not apologize for having skin. Eben came to supper, clean-shaven the next night, which caused such a silence in the dining room that he stopped inside the door. "Did someone die?" he asked. "Not yet," Alma said. "Sit down before the potatoes do." Lila Crane took the chair beside him. Pearl Dacey chose the other. Violet Harrow sat across the table, her green hat removed but not forgotten. For 40 minutes, Eben endured questions about curtains, church attendance, future children, his income, his cattle, and whether he snored. Alma carried plates in and out while pretending not to hear. At one point, his gaze followed her toward the kitchen with the helpless expression of a man watching the last boat leave shore. After the women departed, he remained at the table. Alma collected cups. "Are all courtships like that?" he asked. "No. Some include music. I would rather face a bear." A bear seldom asks about curtains. He smiled then, sudden and rare. It changed his whole face. Alma looked down before her own expression revealed too much. "Come to Sage Crown tomorrow," he said. "I need someone to tell me what must be made fit for an inspector. You need a housekeeper. I need a truthful eye. Housekeepers can be kind. And you believe I cannot? I believe you know the difference between kindness and lying." She agreed to go, though she told herself it was for the Valley records, and not for the chance to see the rooms where he lived. The road to Sage Crown climbed through aspen groves, already turning gold. Eben drove the wagon slowly, where rocks broke through the track. Alma sat beside him, with a basket of lunch at her feet, and the copied grant in her bag. The air smelled of dry grass and fir. Far below, Laurel Valley opened like a green hand between brown slopes. Small farms followed the silver line of the creek. Smoke rose from chimneys. Children looked no larger than seeds in the schoolyard. "All of that depends on cold water?" Alma asked. "By late summer, yes. Snowmelt feeds the other branches until July. Cold water keeps running. And Western Divide could close it. They say they would build a reservoir and sell shares. Men who cannot pay would sell their land. Western Divide would buy it. Then the spring is not their prize. The valley is." Eben glanced at her. "That is what I think." Sage Crown Ranch stood on a shelf of land beneath a dark stone ridge. The house was sturdy but tired, with a porch leaning slightly east, and curtains faded nearly white. Inside, Eben had swept, but bachelor dust remained in all the places a broom passed without conviction. His mother's blue bowl sat on the mantel. A pair of his father's gloves rested beside the door, as if the dead man might return for them. Alma moved slowly through the rooms. She noticed not dirt, but loneliness. One cup by the pump. One coat on the peg. One pillow holding the shape of one head. The kitchen had good light, and a wide work table scarred by years of bread making. She placed her palm against it, and imagined dough under her hands. Winter wind outside. Eben coming in with snow on his shoulders. The picture arrived too easily. "Well?" he asked from the doorway. "It is a sound house." That pause sounded expensive. "The chimney needs cleaning. The pantry latch is broken. Your guest room smells like mice. And no lawful family should be asked to share a blanket with whatever lives in that mattress." "Anything else?" She turned to him. "A wife is not proof of residency if she is displayed for an inspector and forgotten after he leaves. Whoever wrote that notice wants a performance. Then help me make it convincing." The request cut deeper than he knew. Alma walked past him onto the porch. Her breathing was heavier from the stairs, and she was grateful for the excuse to face the view. Eben followed. "I said something wrong," he said. "You said exactly what you meant." "Alma," she looked across the valley, "I will help save the spring. I will study every copy, find the missing packet, and stand before any judge who will listen. But I will not teach another woman how to pretend this is her home. That would be cruel to her, and it would be cruel to me." Eben became very still. "Why to you?" Her courage failed at the last step. She picked up the lunch basket. Because I have work enough without arranging a stranger's marriage. They ate beneath a cottonwood near the spring. Cold water rose clear from a seam of grey rock and gathered in a pool before spilling into the creek. Alma knelt carefully and put her fingers into it. The cold made her gasp. Eben crouched beside her. "My mother said this water remembers snow," he said. "Even in August." "Your mother sounds like she understood beautiful things. She would have liked you." Alma looked at him. There was no teasing in his face. She wanted to hold that small kindness, but a square of fresh-cut wood near the bank caught her attention. A survey stake had been driven beside the old channel marker. Red paint marked its top. "Did you put that there?" Eben's expression changed. He pulled the stake free. Burned into one side were the letters WDLC, Western Divide, he said. "They have already surveyed my spring." On the ride down, they found 2 more stakes along the creek and fresh hoofprints leading toward an unused mining trail. Someone had entered Sage Crown without permission. Someone expected the water soon. Alma returned to the office after dark and lit both lamps. She read the Saye entry again, then pulled neighboring deeds to compare the paper, ink and clerk marks. Near midnight, she found the first real crack. The index card listed a survey letter received in 1868 from Territorial Recorder Nathan Cole. The card number ended in 714. In the bound correspondence register, item 714 had a different description written over an erasure. Under the new ink, she could make out 3 words: cold water family use. She was holding the page toward the lamp when the office doorknob turned. Alma blew out the flame and remained still. A key entered the lock. Metal scraped. The door opened 3 inches, then stopped against the chair she had pushed beneath the knob earlier that evening. Someone pressed harder. The chair legs dragged softly over the floor. Alma picked up the iron poker beside the stove. "The office is closed." The pressure stopped. For a moment, she heard only her breathing. Then, a man's voice came through the narrow opening. "Miss Venn? It's Deputy Webb. Clerk Mercer sent me for a file." At midnight, county business. Come back with Mr. Mercer in daylight. The door remained partly open. "You don't want to make trouble over paper, ma'am." "Then stop trying to steal it." Silence followed. The door eased shut. The key withdrew. Footsteps crossed the porch and disappeared into the street. Alma waited 10 minutes before relighting the lamp. Her hand trembled so hard that the match broke. Deputy Webb was 26, nervous and newly married. He had laughed at Violet's insult. He had also just tried to enter a public office in darkness on Mercer's order. Whether he was frightened or corrupt, she could not yet know. She copied the altered register entry onto a scrap of paper and sewed it into the inside hem of her skirt. Then she locked the books away, carried the office key upstairs, and placed a flower bin against her bedroom door. The following afternoon, Mayor Harrow announced a harvest social to introduce Eben to the respectable unmarried ladies of the county. He said the event would raise funds for families threatened by the water dispute. Alma learned from the printed notice tacked to her own porch. Did Eben agree to this? She asked Mildred. "Mr. Saye understands his duty. Does he understand tickets cost $1? Good families will pay. The families most threatened cannot." Mildred sighed. "Alma, must you drag every pleasant thing through a puddle? Only when someone has hidden the truth at the bottom." Mildred stepped close enough for Alma to smell rosewater. "You have mistaken access to other people's records for importance. Be careful. A woman in your position is easy to replace." Alma held her gaze. "Then why are you working so hard to frighten me?" For the first time, Mildred looked uncertain. It lasted only a second. She walked away with her chin high, but Alma now knew she had touched something real. Eben arrived near supper and read the harvest notice twice. "I never agreed to tickets. Did you agree to the social?" Harrow said people needed reassurance. "People need water. Reassurance evaporates faster." He looked tired. "You think every hand offered to me hides a knife? No. I think you keep staring at the offered hands while someone searches your pockets." His jaw hardened. "And I think you are angry with me for considering marriage at all." The truth of it struck too close. Alma folded the notice carefully. "I am angry because you believe a rushed wedding will save the valley, when the paper demanding it is almost certainly false. Almost will not keep the creek open. Neither will marrying the mayor's niece if the mayor is helping steal your records." Eben stared at her. "That is a serious charge. Someone entered the office last night on Mercer's order." "Who?" "Deputy Webb. Did you tell the sheriff?" "Sheriff Tolan plays cards with Mercer every Friday." Eben paced once across the small office. "Come to Sage Crown. Stay there until this is settled. I will not hide in your house." "It is not hiding if I can protect you. That is exactly what hiding is when a man says it to a woman." He stopped. Frustration and fear struggled in his face. "You heard someone at the door. You do not know what he wanted." "I know what men sound like when they expect me to be afraid." Eben softened. "Were you?" "Yes, I simply stayed." He came nearer, then seemed unsure what comfort he had a right to offer. "That may be the bravest definition I have heard." Alma looked down at the folded notice between her hands. "Go to your social, Eben. Smile at the ladies. But watch Harrow, Pike, and Mercer. Watch who speaks when you ask about the missing letters. Will you be there? I run the only kitchen large enough to feed them. Of course I will be there." The harvest social filled the Bellweather meeting hall with paper garlands, fiddle music, and the smell of roasted chicken. Alma had cooked for 2 days. She wore her best dark blue dress, plain at the throat. With sleeves she had altered herself. Cora Bellamy pinned a small spray of yellow asters in Alma's silver-streaked hair. "You look beautiful," Cora said. Alma glanced toward the mirror. "I look like myself with flowers." "That is what I said." For an hour, Alma almost enjoyed the evening. Children stole biscuits from cooling trays. Old Mr. Haskins danced with his cane. Eben stood near the wall in a black coat that fit his shoulders too well for Alma's peace. Violet kept close to him. Lila Crane brought him cider. Pearl Dacey laughed at things he had not meant as jokes. Then Mayor Harrow climbed onto the low platform and raised his glass. He spoke of unity, duty, and the noble women willing to sacrifice comfort for the valley. Finally, he called Eben forward. "Our friend must make a grave choice," Harrow said, "but perhaps not an unpleasant one. Bellweather has no shortage of graceful, suitable ladies." His gaze traveled over the unmarried women, then passed across Alma as if demonstrating an exception. A few people laughed. Eben did not. Harrow invited the ladies to place their names in a silver bowl for a series of respectable visits to Sage Crown. The game was dressed as charity, but the humiliation beneath it was clear. Women blushed and played along. Men called advice. Alma stood at the rear, holding a tray that grew heavier by the second. Violet approached her with a folded card. "Would you put this in the bowl for me?" "You are closer." "But you are serving." Alma accepted the card because refusing would make a scene. Violet did not release it at once. "You should add your own name," she said brightly. "It would give everyone a good laugh." Mildred heard and smiled into her glass. Several women turned. Alma felt heat rise from her collar to her face. "No," Alma said. "I do not offer myself as entertainment." Violet tilted her head. "Surely, you do not imagine Eben might want you. He needs a wife, not another winter's supply of flour." The laugh began in one corner and moved through the hall in broken pieces. Some people looked ashamed. None spoke. Alma stood completely still, the tray pressed into her palms. Eben stepped away from the platform. "That is enough, Violet." But his words came after the laugh. They came quietly, when Alma had needed them loud. Violet lifted both hands. "It was only a joke. Everyone knows no cowboy would genuinely desire a woman her size. Even Alma knows that." Alma looked at Eben. She did not ask him to love her. She asked him, without words, to refuse the cruelty fully, before the whole room. His face held anger, but also the old caution of a solitary man who hated public conflict. He glanced toward Harrow, toward the crowd, then back to her. That brief hesitation was all it took. Alma placed the tray on the nearest table. "The coffee is in the kitchen," she said. Her voice did not shake. "Anyone still thirsty may pour it for themselves." She walked through the hall while people made room. Every step felt loud. Her knees hurt. Her throat burned. She would not hurry for their comfort. Outside, the night air struck cold against her face. She crossed the empty street, entered the boarding house, climbed the stairs one at a time, and locked her bedroom door. Only then did Alma break. She sat on the edge of her narrow bed, pressing both hands over her mouth so the children in the next room would not hear. Tears came, with a force that bent her forward. She cried for the girl she had been, who once believed kindness would protect her. She cried for every plate she had filled, for people who later mocked the hands that served it. She cried because Eben had hesitated. Most painfully, she cried because part of her had hoped he might look at her the way a man looked at a woman he could not bear to lose. A soft knock sounded after midnight. "Alma," Eben said through the door, "please let me speak." She wiped her face, but did not rise. "There is nothing to say tonight. I should have stopped it before Harrow finished his first sentence. Yes, I was a coward. Yes." Silence filled the hall. "I am sorry," he said. Alma stared at the thin line of lamplight beneath the door. "You are sorry because they were cruel. I am hurt because, for one moment, you wondered if agreeing with me would make them laugh at you too." He did not deny it. That honesty hurt, but not as much as another excuse would have. "I do not know how to repair that," he said. "Then do not ask me to teach you tonight." His boots remained outside her room for a long time. At last, they moved down the stairs. Alma lay awake until the lamp emptied. At dawn, she washed her face, pinned up her hair, and went downstairs. The meeting hall still held dirty glasses and wilting garlands. She had promised herself she would never enter it again. Instead, she crossed the street and began clearing her own kitchen. Work did not heal humiliation, but it gave grief somewhere to stand. When she lifted the flour barrel lid, she found an envelope tucked beneath the scoop. It was addressed to Eben Saye in faded ink. The postmark was dated 3 months earlier. Alma carried it to the window. The seal had been broken and pressed shut again with clear gum. Inside was a letter from the Territorial Water Office in Denver, answering an inquiry Eben had apparently made about Coldwater Spring. The final lines read, "No marital or domestic qualification attaches to the recorded Saye grant. Any contrary notice should be reported to this office at once." Someone had stolen the answer before Eben saw it. Someone had hidden it in Alma's flower after the social, either to frame her or to place it where she would find it. On the back, barely visible in pencil, were 2 words and a number. North Fork, 312. Alma read them 3 times. Then she looked across the street toward the clerk's office. Deputy Webb stood inside, pale and motionless, watching her through the glass. He looked away first. Alma placed the letter inside her bodice, took her shawl from its peg, and crossed the street. Webb moved toward the rear door, but she entered before he reached it. "North Fork, 312, she said. He stopped with his back to her. "I do not know what that means." "Then you will not mind if I ask Sheriff Tolan." Webb turned. He had the exhausted eyes of a man who had not slept. "The sheriff is part of it. Not the worst part, but enough." Alma closed the door behind her. "Did you put the letter in my flower?" "Yes. I could not hand it to you where they might see. You tried to enter the office at midnight. Mercer ordered me to remove the correspondence register. I told him your chair blocked the door. He said we would take it after the social, when everyone was across the street." "Did you?" "No. I hid the office key. He thinks he lost it while drinking." Webb rubbed both hands over his face. "I never meant for this to happen. Pike helped me buy a house when I married Annie. Then he showed me the note I had signed. The interest was twice what he promised. He said he would forgive it if I carried packets from the office to an old assay cabin on North Fork. I told myself they were copies." "Cabin 312. He nodded. "That is the old claim number. Harrow, Pike, and Mercer meet a Western Divide agent there. I heard them say the original Saye survey and the intercepted letters are stored in an iron dispatch box. They plan to burn everything after the inspection. When do they meet again? Tomorrow night. They are taking the last payment books up today. Alma looked at the frightened young man. Why tell me now? His mouth tightened. Annie was at the social. She laughed when Violet made that remark. I saw her face afterward. She was ashamed. So was I. You fed us for a month when our baby was sick. I repaid you by standing quiet while they made you small. His voice broke. I am tired of discovering what kind of man silence makes me. Alma understood that sentence. Write down everything you carried, every date, and every person you saw. Sign it before 2 witnesses. Then take Annie somewhere safe. Harrow will say, I am lying to escape my debt. He will. That is why I am going to find the box. Webb stared at her. The North Fork Trail is 12 miles of bad mountain. I can count miles. Take Saye. Alma thought of Eben outside her room, admitting his cowardice only after it mattered. No. If Harrow sees him leave town, they will move the records. You cannot go alone. I have been alone in rooms full of people most of my life. A mountain will at least be honest about it. She returned to the boarding house, packed bread, cheese, a lantern, matches, and Cora's small revolver. She wore a divided riding skirt kept from younger days and borrowed a steady mule named Molly from the freight stable. Before leaving, she wrote Eben a short note. The marriage condition is false. I have proof of the hidden letters and a trail to the originals. Do not follow unless I fail to return by morning. Trust me once before asking me to trust you again. Alma rode out while the town slept off its celebration. The North Fork Trail climbed beyond the last farms into dark timber. Molly took the slope carefully. Alma's body ached before the first hour passed. The saddle pressed hard against her hips, and cold air tightened her chest. She allowed herself to stop when she needed, but she did not turn back. Every time Violet's laughter returned, Alma replaced it with the sound of cold water spring moving over stone. The valley did not need her to be graceful. It needed her to continue. Clouds gathered against the peaks by afternoon. Webb's directions led her past an abandoned stamp mill and across a stream where the bridge had lost half its planks. She dismounted and guided Molly through the water. On the far bank, fresh wagon tracks cut into the mud. Near dusk, Alma saw the assay cabin between the trees. Its roof sagged under old pine needles. One window had been covered with boards, but the chimney released a faint ribbon of smoke. Horses stood in a lean-to. Voices carried from inside. She tied Molly downwind and moved through the brush. Each step had to be chosen. Dry branches reached for her skirt. Her breath sounded enormous in her ears. At the back wall, she crouched below a broken pane and listened. The inspector arrives Thursday, Mercer said. Once he certifies no lawful household, the county reversion takes effect. And if Saye marries the Denver girl? Another man asked. Harrow answered. Violet understands the arrangement. She will leave after the inspection and claim desertion. Pike will call the ranch note. We acquire the property either way. Alma closed her eyes. Violet had not merely been cruel. She had been helping them lead Eben into a trap. What about the Venn woman? Pike asked. She has no authority, Mercer said. After last night, she will be too ashamed to show her face. The men laughed softly. Alma felt something inside her become calm. They believed shame was a locked door. They had no idea she had learned to live behind locked doors and still find windows. Through the broken pane, she saw an iron dispatch box on the table. Beside it lay Pike's red account book and the missing Saye survey tied with green ribbon. 4 men were inside. Harrow, Pike, Mercer, and a narrow-faced stranger Alma assumed was the Western Divide agent. Sheriff Tolan stood near the stove. Alma could not overpower 5 men. She did not need to. She needed the papers and witnesses who could not be bought. She eased away from the wall, mounted Molly, and rode half a mile back down the trail. There she stretched a piece of twine across the muddy road at ankle height and tied 3 empty tin cups to it. Then she waited beneath the trees. Darkness settled. cold rain began as a mist. An hour later, the cabin door opened. Harrow and the Western Divide agent rode downhill with the sheriff. Their horses struck the twine. Tin cups clattered across the road, and the animals shied. While the men cursed and searched the brush, Alma moved around them through the timber. She reached the cabin to find Pike and Mercer outside with lanterns, looking toward the noise. The back window was too narrow. The chimney base had an ash door, but not large enough. Alma circled to the lean-to, where split wood had left a gap beside the wall. She pushed one board inward. It groaned. Pike called Mercer's name. Alma pushed again, squeezed through, and knocked over a bucket. Footsteps came toward the door. She seized the green ribbon packet and Pike's account book. The iron box was too heavy. She opened it and found letters, receipts, and a folded survey map. She stuffed as much as she could into her satchel. The latch lifted just as she pulled the old board back into place. Alma crawled into the rain. A lantern beam swept the lean-to. "Someone's here!" Mercer shouted. She ran as well as her body allowed, not fast but hard. Branches struck her face. Men crashed behind her. Molly heard her and pulled against the reins. Alma reached the mule, got one foot into the stirrup, and felt a hand catch the back of her coat. Mercer dragged her down. She landed on one knee with pain so sharp her vision flashed white. "You stupid woman!" he panted. "Did you think you could steal county property?" Alma twisted and swung the satchel. The metal corner struck his cheek. He stumbled, swore, and raised his hand. A rifle shot cracked through the trees. The bullet struck a pine above Mercer's head, showering them with bark. "Touch her again," Eben called from the darkness, "and the next one lands lower." He stepped into the lantern light, with a Winchester against his shoulder. Deputy Webb stood behind him, holding another rifle, shaking but determined. Mercer released Alma. "This is robbery." "Then report it," Alma said, struggling upright. "Be sure to list what we stole." Eben came to her, but he did not take her arm until she nodded. He helped her stand and looked at the blood on her cheek where a branch had cut it. "Your note said not to follow," he said, "until morning. I decided trust did not require me to be obedient." Despite the pain, she almost smiled. That is a dangerous improvement. Webb tied Mercer's hands. Pike had fled toward the cabin when the shot sounded, but Eben had brought 2 Laurel Valley farmers up the lower trail. They caught Pike, attempting to carry the iron box into the woods. Before midnight, the complete records were in Alma's satchel. Pike and Mercer were bound to their own saddles, and Sheriff Tolan, Harrow, and the agent were somewhere below, unaware that their secret had collapsed. The rain became sleet. Alma tried to mount, but her injured knee would not take her weight. Eben spread his bedroll in the cabin, after the others left with the prisoners and evidence. He built the fire high, then knelt several feet from her. "May I look at your knee?" Alma nodded. He wrapped it with gentle hands. Neither spoke until the wind pressed against the walls. "I found your note at noon," he said. "Webb came to me before I could saddle. He confessed everything. I told him to leave town. He said he had spent enough years leaving the hard thing for someone braver. That sounds like him now." Eben tied the cloth and sat back on his heels. "What I did at the social was not a small failure. I saw the cruelty coming, and I measured what it might cost me to stop it. You saw me measuring." Alma watched the fire. "Yes. I have lived alone so long that I mistook avoiding people for being independent of them. But I still wanted their respect. I wanted it enough to let them wound you. You did speak. Too late, and too softly." Alma looked at him then. "An apology does not erase a moment. I know. I am not asking you to erase it. What are you asking?" "Nothing tonight. I want you warm, safe, and free to be angry." That answer reached her more deeply than a promise would have. She lay beneath his dry coat, while he sat near the door with the rifle across his knees. Once, when thunder rolled over the ridge, she woke and found him watching the fire. He did not know she was awake. "I nearly lost you," he whispered. Alma closed her eyes, not ready to answer, but no longer certain she wanted to remain silent forever. They returned to Bellweather the next afternoon. News had outrun them. Sheriff Tolan had claimed Alma attacked county officers and stole records. Mayor Harrow had ordered her arrest. Yet the sheriff could not find enough deputies willing to carry it out. Webb had given his statement before the minister, the schoolteacher, and 20 farmers. Pike's account book listed payments to Harrow, Mercer, Tolan, Violet, and the Western Divide agent. The intercepted Denver letter proved Eben had been deliberately deceived. Most important, the original survey packet contained no domestic condition at all. The territorial hearing began Thursday morning. Examiner Ruth Morrow arrived from Denver in a gray traveling coat, carrying her authority in one small valise and needing no man to explain it. Harrow had expected an old judge he could flatter. The sight of a sharp-eyed woman unsettled him. Every bench in the courthouse filled. Alma entered through the center aisle. Her knee forced her to use a cane. A purple bruise marked her cheek. Murmurs followed her, but no one laughed until Violet whispered loudly to Mildred, "Here comes the lovesick cook with her stolen treasure." Mildred did not answer. Her face had gone pale. Alma reached the clerk's desk and placed the leather packet before Examiner Morrow. "State your name and interest," Morrow said. "Alma Venn. I manage the Mountain Bell boarding house and receive records for the county land office. My interest is the truth." Harrow rose. "This woman has no legal standing." Morrow looked at him over her spectacles. "Then her evidence should be easy for you to answer. Sit down." Alma began with the deed book. She explained the different inks, the changed index, and the missing letters. She spoke slowly, using words farmers understood. She did not decorate the truth. She let each fact carry its own weight. Webb testified after her. He admitted his debt, his fear, and his part in removing the papers. Pike's account book was opened. Payment after payment appeared beside initials that were no longer mysterious. Harrow tried to make the hearing about Alma. He called her lonely, jealous, and obsessed with Eben. He claimed she had invented the conspiracy to stop his marriage to Violet. "Isn't it true," he said, pacing before her, "that you desired Mr. Saye for yourself?" The room shifted with embarrassed breaths. This was the wound Harrow believed would silence her. Alma rested both hands on her cane. "Yes," she said. Eben looked at her. Harrow smiled. "Then you admit bias." "I admit affection. Affection did not change the ink. It did not hide the letters in my flower. It did not write your name beside a $1,200 payment." A low sound moved through the benches. Harrow's face reddened. "You expect this town to believe a man like Eben Saye would return such feelings?" Alma felt the old humiliation reach for her. This time she did not step back. "Whether he does is not your business, and it is not proof of anything," she said. "That is what you never understood. My heart can break and I can still read. I can be mocked and still remember. I can be unwanted by every man in Colorado, and your forgery remains a forgery. You counted on people seeing my body before they heard my words. You counted on me being ashamed. I am done carrying your shame for you." No one moved. Mildred lowered her eyes. Cora Bellamy began to cry quietly in the second row. Examiner Morrow turned to Harrow. "Do you have an answer concerning the payment?" He did not. The hearing lasted 4 hours. By the end, Morrow had voided the false notice, confirmed Eben's water right, and placed the county land office under territorial review. Harrow was removed from authority pending fraud charges. Mercer and Pike were held for trial. Tolan lost his badge before sunset. Western Divide's application was rejected and forwarded to the Attorney General. Outside the courthouse, the Valley families gathered around Alma. Some thanked her. Some tried to touch her hand. People who had laughed at the social now spoke as though they had always admired her. Alma raised one palm. "Coldwater is safe. Go home and prepare your ditches for winter. We can discuss apologies when they have had time to become actions." The crowd slowly dispersed. Eben waited beside Blue. He approached after they were alone. "The condition is gone," he said. "Yes, you no longer need a wife. I never needed the women in that silver bowl. You were willing to choose one, for the water. That does not make the woman less used." He accepted the words. No, it does not. He reached into his coat, and Alma's heart tightened when she saw a small ring box. She took one step back. "Do not," she said. Eben stopped. "Do not ask me now, while you are grateful and ashamed. Do not make me the reward at the end of your danger. I deserve to know what remains when the valley no longer needs saving." He closed the box. Pain crossed his face, but he nodded. "Then I will show you." Autumn settled over Bellweather. Harrow Dry Goods closed while creditors examined its books. Mildred and Violet left for Denver without saying goodbye. Clerk Mercer awaited trial in the county jail. The land office received a new clerk, but Examiner Morrow recommended Alma as official records custodian, with a salary and authority equal to the work she had long performed. Alma accepted only after the county agreed to keep the office open to homesteaders without reading fees. Eben did not speak of marriage again. He came every Tuesday with water measurements from Coldwater Spring and filed them properly. He repaired the boarding house porch without being asked, but he sent a written estimate first and let Alma approve it. When Cora Bellamy's husband returned on crutches, Eben gave him paid work, rebuilding the Sage Crown flume. He transferred a protected share of the spring's overflow into a valley trust so no future owner, including himself, could sell the community dry. At the first town meeting after the hearing, several men proposed naming the new reservoir Say Lake. Eben stood before them. Alma Venn saved the records, found the proof, and crossed North Fork while the rest of us argued, he said. "If you need a name, use hers. Better still, stop naming things after people and remember what they did." Then he faced the same room that had laughed at her. "I failed Alma at the Harvest Social. I cared more about avoiding your judgment than stopping your cruelty. Some of you failed her too. Do not call her brave now because praise is easy. Be brave enough to remember your own part." He sat beside Alma, not in front of her, and did not look around to see whether anyone approved. That was the first moment she believed his change might last. Winter came early. Snow closed the upper road, and Eben took a room at the Mountain Bell after a supply trip left him stranded in town. He helped serve breakfast when Cora's youngest caught fever. He washed dishes badly and accepted instruction. At night, he and Alma sat in the office comparing maps or reading beside the stove. Without a deadline between them, conversation found its own pace. He told her about his mother, who had wanted him to study engineering. Alma told him about the traveling book salesman who once proposed to her at 23, then withdrew the offer when his sister objected to her size. She had laughed when telling that story for years. With Eben, she admitted it had broken something in her. "He was a fool," Eben said. "Perhaps. But calling him one did not make me feel less left. What would? Nothing. Some hurts do not disappear. They simply stop choosing the road." He considered that. "Then I will not ask you to forget mine." On Christmas Eve, the boarding house tables filled with valley families. People brought what they could: canned peaches, venison, knitted socks, a jar of coffee saved for months. No one had much money. For once, no one pretended that worth depended on it. Deputy Webb, no longer a deputy, stood and apologized publicly to Alma. His voice shook. Annie apologized too, not only for laughing, but for teaching herself that another woman's humiliation could purchase her place among respectable people. Alma accepted neither apology quickly. She listened. Then she gave them work repairing damaged index cards and told them trust would be rebuilt, one honest entry at a time. Later, after the guests left and snow softened the street, Eben asked Alma to walk with him to the bridge. The moon turned the frozen creek pale blue. He carried no ring box. "I have spent 3 months trying to prove something," he said. "I noticed. I cannot prove love the way you proved a forgery. There are no matching inks. No witness can sign for it. That is unfortunate. I have become fond of evidence." He smiled. "I can only tell you what I know. I look for you in every room. When something happens, good or bad, you are the person I want to tell. Sage Crown feels lonely now, not because it lacks a wife, but because it lacks you. I admire what you did for the valley, but I love the woman who tells hungry children to eat while the food is hot. I love the woman who notices the truth at the bottom of a pleasant puddle. I love your mind, your temper, your tenderness, your silver hair, your strong hands, and yes, Alma, the body that carries all of you through this world. I do not want a convenient marriage. I want a life in which you remain fully yourself. Alma looked down at the dark water moving beneath the ice. And if the town laughs again, then I will answer before you have to look at me. And if I do not move to Sage Crown, then I will learn the road to town very well. And if I keep the office would be foolish to lose you. And if I say I need time, I will be here in spring. She studied his face. There was hope in it, but no demand. He had finally made room for her answer. You may ask me now, she said. Eben's breath left him in a white cloud. He took her hand, warm despite the cold. Alma Venn, will you marry me? Yes, she said. But not to save your water, no. And not because you believe you owe me. Never. Then yes. He kissed her beneath the snow-heavy cottonwoods, slowly, and with such tenderness that the old bridge, the cold night, and every cruel voice in Alma's memory seemed to move farther away. They did not vanish. She had been right about hurt. It did not disappear, but it no longer chose the road. They married in April beside Coldwater Spring. Alma wore blue and yellow asters. Eben wore the black coat from the Harvest Social. But this time, he did not stand on a platform while others judged the women before him. He stood at Alma's side. Cora's boys carried bread from the boarding house. Webb brought the restored Saye letters. Examiner Morrow traveled from Denver and signed the register as witness. Some townspeople came because they loved Alma. Some came because guilt had taught them humility. A few came because they feared being remembered as cruel. Alma understood the difference. She welcomed no false closeness, but neither did she close the valley against change. People were allowed to become better. They were not allowed to pretend they had always been so. Alma kept her position as records custodian and divided her week between town and Sage Crown. Eben built wider kitchen steps without announcing that they were for her knees. She caught him measuring the doorway once and asked what he was doing. Making room, he said. There was already room. He put down the ruler. You're right. I should have said I was making the room fit you. She kissed his cheek. That is better. Together, they established the Laurel Water Trust. Every family receiving creek water held one vote, whether they owned 2 acres or 200. The trust paid for new gates, repaired ditches, and kept public copies of every filing in 3 separate buildings. Alma insisted on that last part. Paper should never again have only one hiding place, she said. Years later, travelers entering Laurel Valley still heard the story of the heavy woman everyone overlooked, and the cowboy who almost married the wrong person to save a spring. The careless version made Eben the hero because he arrived in the woods with a rifle. The people who knew better told it differently. They said Alma had already found the truth, crossed the mountain, entered the cabin, and taken the evidence before Eben fired a shot. His courage mattered, but it did not replace hers. On quiet evenings, Alma and Eben sat on the Sage Crown porch while Coldwater moved toward the farms below. Children played near the new flume. Supper smells drifted from the kitchen. Alma's hair grew more silver. Her figure remained broad and soft. Her arms remained strong, and Eben's love did not require her to become smaller in any sense. One sunset, he asked whether she ever wished the town had recognized her sooner. Alma watched light gather on the creek. Sometimes, she said, being overlooked cost me years I cannot recover. But recognition is not the same as worth. They did not give me value when they finally saw me. I had it while they were laughing. Eben took her hand. Below them, water passed from the mountain into the valley, belonging to no single person and keeping thousands of quiet roots alive. Alma listened to its steady voice and thought of the woman she had been in the courthouse aisle, carrying proof while people judged the shape of the hands that held it. They had wanted her invisible, They had mistaken silence for emptiness, service for weakness, and shame for surrender. In the end, Alma did not destroy them. She did something they feared more. She made the truth public, saved what they meant to steal, and refused to let them rewrite the story afterward. And every spring, when snowmelt filled Laurel Creek and yellow asters returned beside the boarding house steps, the valley remembered that its water had been protected by the woman it once refused to see.